The raid started at dusk. Vishari-supplied missiles tearing through a border colony's medical ward.
Get the wounded to the shelters. I'll cover the entrance.
She grabbed a child from a burning stretcher and hurled herself toward the bunker. The ceiling came down before she made the door. 3 days later, a sterile government notice appeared on Anthony Castellano's private terminal. We regret to inform you that your daughter, Charlotte Castellano, volunteer medic, was killed in action on Colony 7.
Note hair, not Charlotte.
He remembered a dinner years ago when she'd first told him she wanted to volunteer.
You taught me to help people, Dad. This is what I was meant to do.
Now he sat in the dark, her pendant in his palm, a small Earth emblem she never took off.
Vishari armed them. Earth can't act, but I am not Earth.
15 years later, the Vishari arms cartel dominated the galactic weapons market, supplying every minor conflict with ruthless efficiency.
Profit margins are up 12% this quarter. The Terrans still haven't found a legal loophole to touch us.
In the Terran Defense Command, Commander Sorensen slammed a report onto his desk. Every raid used Vishari-tagged munitions, but treaties tied Earth's hands.
We can't stop them. It's a private conglomerate, and neutrality laws protect them. Tell me, how do we fight an enemy we can't even name?
But a small, obscure bylaw in the Galactic Commerce Code allowed private entities to purchase subsidiary shares without triggering ownership alarms. Anthony Castellano, now a white-haired financier, sat in a windowless office, surrounded by screens showing shell company filings.
Ouagadougou Holdings. Bandar Seri Begawan, limited 4,000 names I memorized. Each one a brick in a wall no one will see until it's too late.
He routed the first purchase order, a minuscule stake in a Vishari subsidiary that manufactured targeting systems. The cartel's automated systems logged the transaction as noise. Vexer Thane never noticed.
Another obscure buyer. Let them waste their credits. Our position is unassailable.
The plan was in motion. No one knew. No one could know. Over a decade, Anthony's shell companies multiplied. By year 5, he held minority positions in over 300 Vishari subsidiaries. Each purchase was minuscule, a fraction of a percent, routed through layers of intermediaries, so deep that no algorithm flagged a pattern.
The quarterly audit is clean. These minor fluctuations are beneath our notice. Focus on the next big contract with the Acadians.
But the cartel's internal systems had flagged an anomaly. Vexer Thane personally overrode the alert, labeling it paranoid noise.
Good. Keep looking the other way. In a few more years, you won't have a choice.
The breakthrough came with a proxy purchase of 2.3% of a subsidiary that made warhead triggers. It came with a board observer seat.
I can hear them now. Their strategies, their upcoming deals, all of it.
Each night, alone in his office, he played a single audio file, Charlotte's last birthday message, her voice untouched by the war.
I am sorry it's taking so long, sweetheart, but I am close. I promise.
3 more years. Anthony's web of 4,000 shells now held 48% of the Vishari parent company. Then, a rival firm, Orion Capital, began a hostile accumulation, throwing his quiet takeover into chaos.
Orion wants to carve up the cartel. They'll trigger a bidding war and ruin everything. I need to move faster.
He glanced at the old photo on his desk. Charlotte's first artwork, a lopsided heart, and the words, "My hero, Dad." That afternoon, he called a private contact at a marginal Vishari shareholder and offered to buy their stake through a dummy charity.
The Castellano Charitable Trust will transfer the funds by end of day. This transaction never happened.
The share transfer lodged in the Galactic Registry at 2:14 a.m. It pushed Anthony's total to 49.8%.
Just 0.2% to go, and I know exactly where to get it.
Vexer Thane, unaware, announced a board meeting for the following Tuesday, expecting business as usual.
Tuesday will do nicely. By then, the last shares will be mine, and the entire cartel will belong to a grieving father.
The Tuesday meeting opened with Vexer Thane outlining new weapon contracts, his confidence as polished as the obsidian table. Then the main holo screen snapped to a gaunt human face. White-haired, eyes like winter steel.
You are not authorized to appear in this chamber. Identify yourself.
My name is Anthony Castellano. As of 9:02 this morning, I own 51% of this company.
Impossible. The ownership regulations, security, purge this intrusion now.
The corporate legal AI voice filled the room. Ownership confirmed. The Castellano Trust holds controlling interest. All executive privileges revoked.
Effective immediately. Every member of this board is terminated. Security will escort you out.
Vexer Thane clawed at the table as two Terran security contractors gripped his arms, pulling him from the chair he had commanded for decades.
Now issue the conversion protocols. Every factory switches to Terran warship production. The order is signed and irrevocable.
Across the galaxy, Vishari assembly lines halted. Old munitions schematics vanished from screens, replaced by warship hull blueprints. On Vishari munitions factory floor, workers stared at dark screens, schedules replaced by one message: new ownership. Await instructions. Shift manager Grell, a scarred Jakari, punched a console and shouted that the factory belonged to the Cartel, not a Terran ghost. The Castellano Trust broadcast offered full severance with a bonus to stay through transition. Grell backed away.
They believe it's a hostile asset grab. They'll learn soon this was never about profit.
In Silo 7, a plasma torch sliced the first antimatter casing. Within hours, a warship hull plate emerged from the forge. At 1437, the news hit galactic exchanges. Vishari stock plunged 59% before circuit breakers froze trading. On Factory Station Theta, a tech tried to disable the lines. Terran security embedded on-site subdued him within minutes.
Good. No sabotage, no delays. For Charlotte, it must be flawless.
By the next shift, a Terran cruiser frame bore its new serial number, TCAS-001, gleaming under cyan construction light. Rumors rippled. A single buyer had swallowed the Cartel, no name yet, but soon, the first crate, stamped with Terran serial numbers, landed at the Acadian Advance Base on Ket-3, its seals unbroken. Inside, a datapad glowed with a single message. Contract honored. Future orders subject to review. The Acadian general hurled the device against the wall, splintering its case. His roar echoed through the hangar. Within the hour, news of the note blazed across galactic markets. Vishari shares, already frozen, triggered a cascade of sell-offs. Allied defense conglomerates collapsed in sympathy. The exoplanetary index fell 15% in under 4 minutes.
The Terran government had no prior knowledge of this acquisition. We are investigating.
Sorensen read the statement without inflection, but a muscle twitched in his jaw. Investigative journalists traced the ownership chain, hitting dead ends at shell corporations with names like Hobart Consortium and Reykjavik Strategic. Every electronic trail terminated at Anadir Trust, registered on a barren moon in the Cygnus Vale.
They can keep digging. 4,000 shells, each named for a city I'll never see. Bury the truth too deep.
The Galactic Council chamber erupted. Delegates from 7 species demanded sanctions against Earth for violating neutrality treaties. But the legal committee's ruling was swift. The Cartel was now a Terran private entity under interstellar trade law, and sanctions would break foundational treaties. Reporter Eska Lorne of the Galactic Inquisitor traced the largest ownership spike to Anadir Trust, a shell registered on a barren moon in the Cygnus Vale. When she interviewed the Trust's sole listed trustee, an automated reply cited confidentiality clauses and disconnected. In his windowless office, Anthony massaged a sudden tightness in his chest. A medical alert pinged on his wristband.
Not yet. The work isn't finished. Let me see this through.
In a safe house on Karis Station, Vexer Thane screamed at a news feed. accusing Terran intelligence of orchestrating the takeover. But the reporter's story, now galactic, ran with the headline, "Grieving Terran father suspected in cartel acquisition."
They have the shape of the truth now, but no name. Let them wonder.
On the same day, Anadir Trust's filing agent died in a transport accident on the Cygnus Vale moon. The last direct link vanished. On public screens across 100 worlds, a leaked message flashed. The buyer is a Terran citizen, not Earth. A father. The story spread like fire. Headlines shifted from Terran aggression to father's revenge.
Earth respects private enterprise. Citizens act freely under law.
Acadian General Vrax broadcast a raw threat: return our weapons, or we take them. Above Ket, -3. The new cruiser, TCAS, -001, dropped out of void space, its guns tracking. The Acadian assault posture evaporated. The note from the crate became a rallying cry. Contract honored. Future orders subject to review. In a spacer bar on Corvus Station, Terran veterans raised glasses, grinning at the screen. No one knew the father's name, but they knew. In a rain-swept square on Earth, a white-haired man watched the same broadcast, indistinguishable from the crowd.
They know why. The Who stays mine a little longer.
Commander Sorensen closed his terminal after reading a classified brief. Anadir Trust, private platform of retribution. Fueled by grief, in his silent study, the medical alert pulsed unanswered. He pulled the pendant from his pocket and played an old chip. The recording hissed. Charlotte's voice, pure and warm, filled the room.
Dad, I know you worry, but the clinic needs volunteers. I'll be careful, promise. I'll call you on my birthday.
I should have burned her passport, locked the door, but I let her go.
Then another memory surfaced. Charlotte at 15, angry at a world that sold death.
Dad, if someone bought all the weapons companies and shut them down, think how many people would live.
I did buy them, and turned them into protection. This is what you wanted. I wish you could see it.
With trembling fingers, he typed his statement, not a justification, but an elegy for a volunteer who believed in peace. He programmed the release to cascade across the holonet at dawn, then picked up the pendant.
Tomorrow, everyone will know your name. And mine. I am sorry. It took so long.
At dawn, the holonet lit up with a single, unbypassable message. The confession of Anthony Castellano. My name is Anthony Castellano. 15 years ago, Vashari weapons killed my daughter Charlotte. Today, I own every factory that armed her killers.
A father. All this for a daughter? I never knew. I never asked.
On Ket, -3, Acadian General Vrax stared at a status board that read, "Munitions stock at 0. Civil unrest spreading." He opened a comm channel that reached 5 systems and spoke the words his ancestors would curse. They broadcast their unconditional ceasefire. The Acadian Dominion had been broken not by bombs, but by balance sheets.
They're stopping the war. Charlotte, do you see this? The weapons are silent.
It's over. The old man actually pulled it off. Notify the fleet. Stand down, but keep eyes on Castellano.
But in the shadows of the galactic net, new credits moved. A bounty doubled, then tripled, for the head of Anthony Castellano. The man who had been a ghost now stood at the center of a galaxy, his daughter's name, a shield and a target. 2 days later, a black Terran shuttle descended through the rain and landed at a quiet coffee shop on the edge of the city.
We knew, Castellano. We watched your shell companies bloom for 15 years. We chose not to intervene.
Of course they knew. I never expected secrecy from them, just paralysis.
On behalf of Earth, I am authorized to offer our gratitude. What you did...
I didn't do it for Earth. I did it for her. Keep your gratitude and your statues.
No statues, but your story is already being used to justify economic defense policy. You can't stop that.
Then let me be. I'll advise if asked, but I won't command. I am a father, not a general.
Sorensen nodded once and left. The black shuttle rose into the rain, but the conversation had tethered Anthony to a spotlight he never wanted. He returned to his study, the pendant heavy in his pocket, and stared at the signed order that had killed the cartel.
I only wanted justice. Now I am a policy. Charlotte, forgive me.
The news chyron blared. Bounty on Castellano, 2 million credits. The children of the cartel claimed the bounty. That afternoon, a Terran security detail locked down his home. He was now a protected asset.
They turned my study into a bunker. I am not a target. I am a prisoner.
Alone, he played the recording where her voice still laughed at the end.
I'll call you on my birthday, Dad. Every year, I promise.
He closed his eyes, the litany of shell companies and takeovers dissolving into the ache.
Did I do this for her? Or for me? Did I need to crush them to feel something?
A guard offered food. He didn't answer. The tray sat cold beside the door. He stared at the signed order that had undone an empire and saw only a tombstone.
Charlotte, I don't know if this is what you wanted. I only know I couldn't let them win.
At 2 o'clock, the security feed flickered. 3 shadows slipped past the perimeter, moving like professionals. Anthony's wristband buzzed a silent alarm. He didn't hesitate. He rolled out of bed and into the servants' passage.
I knew this house better than any architect. The builders never asked why I wanted a panic room.
He palmed a biometric lock and stepped into a steel-lined vault. Outside, glass shattered. The private comm line was open. He spoke 2 words. Now. Bring everyone. 7 minutes later, the assault shuttle landed on the lawn, its hull cracking paint and branches. The extraction team neutralized the hunters with professional precision. 1 shadow fell in the doorway. Anthony stepped from the vault into the smoke. A stray round caught his shoulder, spinning him against the wall. A medic's hands pressed gauze. He stared at the pendant in his other palm, now speckled crimson.
They came for me, but you kept me alive. Always you.
He woke in a sterile bay, shoulder sealed with synth flesh. The pain was distant, but the pendant still pressed against his chest. He drifted, and the bay dissolved into a memory of afternoon light in a garden Charlotte had loved.
You've done enough, Dad. The factories are quiet. You don't need to carry them anymore.
He reached for her, but the light pulled back, leaving only the hum of the medical monitors.
She's right. The trust was never meant to be a crown. It was always about her. Time to let it go.
That afternoon, a holographic meeting with his legal team. Their warnings were sharp. Donating will create a power vacuum.
Then fill it with conditions. The assets go to Earth's defense forces, locked for protection only. No aggression. That's how she'd want it.
The Castellano Trust Dissolution Order transmitted at 1648. Every shipyard, every cruiser frame, every credit now belonged to the service of Earth. News of the donation hit the nets an hour later. The man who bought an army had just given it away.
It was never mine, sweetheart. It was always your inheritance. Now it's everyone's.
A formal invitation arrived from the Coalition of Neutral Worlds. They wanted to erect a memorial for Charlotte as a symbol of peace, and they asked Anthony to speak.
A memorial. For her. They want me to give her a voice.
He refused twice. The third time, he found himself typing a brief acceptance. In his study, he drafted the speech on a slim tablet, deleting more words than he kept.
What do you say about a daughter who believed in saving lives while the galaxy sold death?
The day arrived. A crowd of thousands gathered on the Memorial Plaza, a quiet sculpture of open hands. He stood backstage, the pendant cutting into his palm, his lungs empty.
I faced a boardroom without fear. Why is this harder?
Then the stage manager called his name. He walked into the light, speech in hand. At the podium, he looked out at the silent crowd, the pendant now still in his fingers, and he began. His voice, when it came, was steady and low, carrying across the silent plaza.
Charlotte was a volunteer, not a soldier. She went to the border to save lives, because she believed even in war, kindness mattered. I bought the factories that built the weapons that killed her. I turned them into tools of protection. I did it because I couldn't bear that her death meant nothing. She would have asked us to be better, to stop fueling the fires. She would have said, "There's been enough revenge." I tried to honor her. Now it's your turn. Don't let the factories start again. Build them into something that saves lives.
He set down the speech. The silence that followed was absolute, a galaxy holding its breath. Then a sound rose. Not a cheer, but a deep, rolling applause that swept from the front row to the far edges of the plaza. He nodded once and stepped away from the podium, his shoulders heavy but his hands still. Backstage, in the shadows, he leaned against a wall and let the tears come, silent, for her. The speech went viral, but for him, it was just a father keeping a promise he'd made on a cold night 15 years ago. The Akkadian armistice triggered a cascade. Within a month, every major hostile faction had signed a ceasefire. Earth converted the Castellano shipyards to build survey cruisers and medical frigates, retooling the engines of war for exploration. The phrase, "contract honored," became a meme of peace. In spacer bars, toasts went up to the old man who bought an army and gave it away. But when journalists swarmed his residence, the security detail was gone. The house sat dark, the panic room door open. He had left that morning with a single bag, the pendant around his neck, and a commercial ticket to Earth under an old alias.
I am going home, sweetheart. It's time.
No one looked twice at the white-haired man in the shuttle's economy section, staring out at the stars. He pressed his palm to the cold viewport, the pendant tapping the glass. Somewhere ahead, a grassy hill waited. The shuttle's manifest registered him as Mr. Anadir, a ghost name from a dead moon.
Let them wonder. I only have one more thing to do.
The shuttle let him off at a rural stop, and he walked the last mile as the sun touched the horizon, painting the hill gold. He knelt before the simple headstone, the grass damp under his knees, and carefully unhooked the pendant from his neck.
Charlotte, I am here. It's been 15 years.
He spoke quietly, not to the galaxy, but to her. The words were a report, not a boast.
I shut down the factories that made the weapons. I gave the fleet to Earth, locked for protection, never aggression. I tried to do what you would have wanted. Forgive me for the weapons that still exist. I couldn't undo everything, but I stopped the flow. I hope it was enough.
A single ray of sunlight broke through the clouds, illuminating the pendant and the letters of her name. His shoulders shook. The tears he'd held back for 15 years came in a silent wrenchily. When the tremors ceased, he stayed where he was, the pendant now resting on the grave, the sun slipping below the horizon. He had finally come home. The caretaker found him at dawn, head pillowed on his arm, the pendant still resting on the headstone. He helped him up, but the old man's breath was shallow, his pulse a flutter. They took him to a quiet hospital room overlooking the same hill. He died as the sun set, a faint smile lingering. The news spread across the galaxy. The father who bought an army had passed. At the Memorial Plaza, thousands left candles and flowers. In his will, he refused state honors, just a plaque with her words. They installed it beside her grave, Charlotte Castellano, 2289 to 2314. She made her father proud. No cannonades or processions, just a father's love turned into a promise, and a galaxy that learned to call it peace. The plaque still gleams on that hill, and sometimes, in the quiet, people say you can hear a father telling his daughter she was right. Years passed. The memorial stood in a quiet park, the plaque catching the morning sun. A young girl, no older than 6, broke away from her mother and ran to the shining brass. She traced the engraved letters with a small finger, lips moving as she tried to read. She turned and asked her mother who the woman on the plaque was. Her mother knelt and explained that this woman was the reason they had peace. The child tilted her head, then looked back at the plaque. The sun caught the brass, a golden flash, and in that moment, another generation learned the name Charlotte Castellano. They knew her as a story, a symbol, a father's promise that changed the galaxy. The child placed a flower she'd picked on the ledge beneath the plaque, and the plaque, that simple brass, reflected the light of a peaceful sky. The view pulled back. The plaque became a dot on a hillside. The hillside a speck on Earth. Earth a blue marble in the void. Around it, Terran ships drifted in formation. No longer warships, but guardians of a peace, bought by a father's grief. A holographic galaxy map shimmered into view. All conflict zones dimmed, every sector a steady blue, and across that map, in the quiet of deep space, 3 words emerged, as if whispered by the stars themselves. For Charlotte. The fleet parted silently, their hulls now bearing not cannons, but medical bays and supply chambers. No child born after this night would ever hear the scream of a Veshari missile, and the plaque on the hill, the pendant on the grave, the shell companies with forgotten city names all fell away into history. What remained was the one thing he'd always wanted, a galaxy that remembered his daughter not as a victim, but as a reason to be better. And the stars, as they always do, kept shining.